Welcome to the Grace Chapel podcast. This series of podcasts is connected to our sermon series, which is called Peace, Be Still, in which we're looking at spiritual warfare, but how a lot of the elements of the armor of God tie in directly with our mental well-being. So I'm Rob Shaver, and today I'm joined by Marjorie Beasley. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
And Marjorie, one of a handful of people at the church that I have invited in to kind of help shape the whole series and kind of speak into some things because of expertise in certain areas. And so can you speak to, some of your training and experience in the mental health field?
Okay, I am a certified grief recovery specialist.
All right.
And they put the two together. It's not just about grief, and grief just doesn't deal with death, but it's any and everything that we deal with. It can go from loss of job, loss of a relationship, loss of a pet, graduation, marriage, all of that. There's some form of grief that deals with that, which is basically a change or end of a familiar pattern of behavior.
Okay.
So, but I have been a grief recovery specialist since, say, 2004. When we lived in Chattanooga.
All right.
And so I've worked with a lot of people over the years. And of course, in being trained for it, I went in to help other people.
Got some help yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Their philosophy is, well, how can you help others when you can't help yourself?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, I had no idea. Even though my mom had died in 2003, and I was strong.
Mm-hmm. So it brings up an interesting piece of it, because today the bigger theme of this week is the idea of truth, right? So Jesus is the truth, but then also the armor of God. We're supposed to put on the belt of truth. And so right away, with some of the grief counseling experience that you have, and I know you said I'm not a counselor, but I'm just going to use that as that's the overall category, is that you found that there's just within that misconceptions, right? Like people have maybe a bad definition of what grief is or not understanding of what that is. I thought it was interesting of the different topics that you, and I said, well, who could help with what? Who would be speaking into which things? You said, oh, I could do this week. And so what is it about truth that really plays into the process of recovery when it comes to grief?
Well, number one, if you are not or cannot be honest with the pain that you're enduring, what is causing that, then you're not going to be free from that. You have to be honest with your feelings, what's going on. And not just honest with God. God put other people on this earth for a purpose. Otherwise, guess what? We would not be here. It would just be him and Adam.
Right.
He saw that need. Right. So we need one another, but in order to be truthful, you will have to be vulnerable, but then you also have to have someone that you can confide in and trust, and that takes on a lot.
Okay, it's really interesting, because I mean, when I spoke about some aspects of truth in within our own brains on Sunday, and but processing, I talked more about the thought side of it. So I might have a thought of like, oh, I can't do this, or I'm too inept, or I'm not, smart enough, or something like that along those lines, and processing that, being able to take the time to look at that thought and evaluate, is this truth or is this a lie? When we talk about feelings, it's the same but different, right? Because if I am feeling angry or elated, whatever the feeling might be, it's a little less about evaluating, is this feeling truth or lie, and more about I loved. It's not about that. It's more about accepting the fact that I really am feeling this, right? You're talking about being honest with yourself. And so like naming the feeling.
Yes.
That's a good distinction. And that, so now we get into this subject of truth, and it takes on a whole different thing. So I guess what I was talking about is still applicable. It's just all of the different ways that we might judge that feeling. I could feel sad and I could think, well, it's not manly, right? So that'd be the thing. I shouldn't feel sad. Being honest about it would be, I feel sad. Like, I can't deny that. This is how I feel. But then we can lie about it. Can you think of other ways that you've seen that kind of come up in?
Say, your cat died. Okay. All right. Now, some people would look at that and say,
Mr. Whiskers.
And say, well, that was just a cat.
Okay.
However, you had a relationship with that cat.
Okay, yeah.
Say that you got the cat when it was a kitten. You have nourished that cat. In fact, you've had conversations with that cat that you couldn't have with a human being, or at least you felt like you couldn't. And so that cat knows all your secret. That cat has loved you unconditionally. And so you have a relationship with that cat. And so the cat dies. And some people look at that where they will say, hey, they cared more about that cat than when their neighbor died. Well, it's all about the relationship. What kind of relationship did they have with their neighbor?
Right. So then the lie could be, I could lose my cat and I could feel this deep sadness about that. And then in process, so first and foremost, I could just try to suppress the feeling of sadness. But then the lies that I could be telling would be like, I shouldn't be this sad about just a cat. And that could be internally, or that could be other people saying those things to me.
Yes.
Right. So there's the kind of, I can compare with my own stuff. Like, I shouldn't be more sad about the cat than I am about my neighbor, to what you're saying. Or it could be other people, right? Like, Marjorie, you just lost your brother, and you seem to be dealing with that better than I'm dealing with losing my cat, right? So then I could compare, and that's a lie, because I actually don't know how you're dealing with it, right? Just surface level stuff. But so I'm guessing you probably see a ton of that in the interactions that you have with people when they talk about grief, right? The comparison trap.
The comparison, and we don't need to compare, because grief is grief.
Right.
I mean, there's no way to be, well, I'm halfway sad. You're sad, or you're happy.
Kind of, we talked some earlier, and we were talking about the lies that we tell ourselves related to feelings. We talked about comparison, and that could be my own loss to my own loss. That could be my own loss to your loss. But I'm gonna read off three or four more to you, and if you can respond to all of them, or just if there's one in particular that you think, oh yeah, I would want to talk a little bit more about that. So here's one lie that we tell ourselves is to not feel it. Right? Don't get angry. Don't cry. Another one is, and this might go hand in hand with that, but this feeling is wrong. Like it's wrong to be mad. It's wrong to be sad. It's wrong to be whatever. And then the third one that I think I've seen quite a bit in people and conversations is I'm the only one dealing with this. And that can take on different forms, right? Like, and so I don't want to tell anybody because no one will understand, or I feel like, or I just feel this sense of isolation and aloneness because nobody else can relate or understand, then I'm just on my own. I can't share it, kind of thing. So what does one of those feel to you like more prominent, or?
So was the first one you said, don't feel it?
Right. Yeah. Or even some of the emotions that come, like don't cry, don't get angry.
What you're suppressing.
Don't let them see,
right.
You know.
Which is suppressing the real feeling. And when you suppress that, eventually it is going to come out because you're suppressing more of it. Don't feel it. And the thing is, our human emotions, the emotions are there.
Mm-hmm.
The emotions are there, and we try to suppress it. And when you least expect it, all that stuff is building up, and then the slightest little thing that somebody now says to you or does to you, it's going to come out in anger. It's going to come out in other reactions or things that we do that we normally don't do.
All right.
You know?
Right.
So I think as a whole, we need to feel. We need to be in an environment where we can like release the anger and I want to say control situation, because people have released that anger and suicide, or release the anger and mass murders and what have you. So
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's really interesting because that kind of boiling over talk, like that is something that is always, I've heard it. I mean, we've all heard that in relation to anger, right? Like if you're angry about something and you just let the anger build up and build up and build up, then eventually you're going to blow. But you're saying it's not just anger. It could be pain. It could be sorrow. It could even, could it even be joy? That if I am just feeling lots of joy, but feel like, oh, I can't share my joy with Eeyore over here, then even suppressing that, it does something to us overall emotionally that eventually I'm going to blow. And usually when we blow, it's not like I'm not going to just start skipping around town. It's usually negative.
It's always negative.
It's always there.
I can't think of either books I've read or people that I've been around or stories that I've heard. It's always bad.
Right.
You know, even if it starts out being something good, but I guess I can't talk about that. So you suppress. And then the bad stuff, I can't talk about that. Or I don't trust someone enough to talk about it, so I'll just keep it to myself. And it never fails. Sometimes the least little thing that you would think, well, I don't understand why that made her so upset. You know? And the thing is, it wasn't just that.
It wasn't that thing.
It wasn't that. And and understanding that concept has helped me to appreciate going through the grocery line and the person being mean to me. It's like, oh, they've got something on their heart.
There's something deeper.
Yeah, something deeper that they haven't been able to express yet. You know,
so. You're a better woman than I am. Well, I'm not a woman, but all right. That's so key. And I love when I've heard people talk about that, when the person cuts them off on the highway or whatever, just kind of think, well, I don't know what they're going through, and I think that's a great place to be. This is really interesting to me because when we talked about these lies, whether it's I'm the only one dealing with this, or this feeling is wrong, or my feeling like you're your thing was bigger than mine or worse than mine, whatever it might be, all of those lies eventually lead to what you're talking about, some sort of suppression, some sort of, I can't express this feeling, or I shouldn't share this with other people, which brings us right back to square one, where you're saying like, well, we've got to be honest with our feelings, right? So that starts with me in my own brain accepting and being honest with my feeling. But then you mentioned a couple of times in that the idea of having someone to talk to. So that though, like, because I just in my small group and some other settings, we're talking about that can be difficult because we've all had those experiences where we finally got the guts to sit down and have the conversation with somebody, and then we shared our feelings and had any number of responses that were disappointing to us, right? Like we just got talked at or are belittled, like the thing that we thought was really big was made like it wasn't a big deal. So we're dismissed so how do you have any tips for us for how can we find safe spaces, safe people?
Well, first of all, you truly have to pray for that.
All right.
You truly have to pray for that. For a Christian, you have to pray because even with another Christian, we still have human traits. And so you have to be careful with who you confide in, but you do need to have someone to confide in. You truly, to me, this one of the purposes why God said it's not good for man to be alone. We need each other. So finding someone that you can confide in and actually having some guidelines even for that person. All right. You just need them to be a listening ear. You don't, for the thing that's really, really gnawing and eating at you, you really don't need their advice. All right. At this moment where you really need to share your heart, you need that listening ear or that listening heart. Because a lot of times when you can go ahead and speak the truth of what's going on, the feelings that you're having, you don't necessarily have to speak the truth about the exact thing that has happened. Okay. Bringing in names, bringing in places or what have you. But your feelings with it. When you can do that and there's someone listening other than, our Father in heaven is listening, it's like it's another human being that God placed for us that we can, they're listening, they're hearing, they're not criticizing, they're not judging, they're not interrupting. Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So let me process this a little bit. So we're going to God, and actually, Cassie had shared a quote with me years ago, and I think it was from an Elizabeth Elliot book where she talked about making God her first confidence. So it's kind of like expressing those things to God first, but then petitioning God and saying, "Who is a person that I can trust?" And so we've been talking a lot, I think, at Grace Chapel with prayer. When it comes to prayer, having faith in prayer that God will give us answers, right? Like that we're praying with that expectation. So asking those types of things. Then in finding that person, there's a couple of things that we're talking about here. So that's what I wanted to kind of go back through this is, one is do not be afraid to set clear boundaries, right? And let someone know exactly what you expect, but what you need, right? Like I feel that happens in my marriage sometimes. Cassie will express some grief with me or some frustration with me, and we kind of joke around about this a lot, right? Like that it's easy for a spouse to go into like fix it mode. but she is really good at saying like, Rob, that's not what I need right now. Right. Like, I just need you to listen to me, or I just need a hug. And so that we should, if we're going to share some of these deeper things, knowing that you are free to do that, I think that is good. But then also, I loved what you're saying. Like, it's almost kind of like setting boundaries on ourselves in a way, right? Like, if I've been feeling depressed, like, I do not necessarily have to share with you if you're my friend, right, and not my therapist, I don't need to share with you all of the circumstances that are revolving around my depression. What I'm wanting to do, what is important, what you're saying is like a key, is just to share the emotion.
Right.
Okay, that's
right.
So it's about kind of creating boundaries with the person that we're speaking to, but then also limiting ourselves. Like, I don't have to just blurt it all out.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. And so, as you're doing this, it gets this stuff up and out.
Okay.
Because number one, you like you set the boundaries where it's like, I don't need advice. I just need you to listen, but not just listening, because that's a skill too. With the listening, you're listening to the heart. You're listening also for the in between, the things that are not being said, but you can feel it. Especially if you've gone to God in prayer, both parties, about this.
Right.
A person can be saying one thing, but you hear what's really coming out, and it's the heart. You're hearing the heart of the matter. And the person speaking, and to speak the truth about the feelings, because once it's up and out, unless you've actually done this yourself, it's such a relief. It's like a load has been lifted that you like been carrying it, and you haven't had anybody that you could really talk to unless they're ready to give you advice and stuff. But you've got it up and out. And even with that, to me, when you get these things up and out, you leave more room for the Spirit to work within you. Right.
Well, and that goes back to what you started out with saying. It's like, it's about you're being honest with your feeling. And by verbalizing it, that is the realization of the honesty, and so that it is real, it is true, this is how I'm feeling. And then that kind of goes back to kind of the thesis statement of this week, right? Is the truth
will set
you free. Yeah.
It truly will. Because if you don't feel comfortable with the person, or you feel like you're going to be judged, or you're talking and then someone interjects while you're talking and start giving advice, then you get the feeling like, oh, well, I guess it didn't matter, Anyway, but when you can really be honest with your feelings to someone and not feel like you're being judged, that within itself is setting your spirit free.
Right.
And a lot of times when you do allow an individual to do that, between them and God, or even if they don't believe in God, God is still at work.
Right. Right.
It's becoming clearer in their mind of how to handle it. Instead of you trying to interject your advice based on what you have done, but it's quite different from what this person is going through.
Yeah. So we're kind of making a little shift here. We're talking about initially, like, if I'm the person that I am kind of going through the thing and I am wanting and feeling I really need to share this with someone, what to look for or how to create the safe space in that respect. And I think that's an important distinction, right? We're not saying you're not necessarily going to just find the right person, although God could direct you that way, but take the initiative to really set that up, set the boundaries, create the space. But then on the flip side, then you move into, well, what if I'm not the person? What if it's my friend that comes to me or somebody that's just coming to me and they're like, can we talk? And they're looking to share. And we've already set some of those guidelines. You've said a couple of times, don't interrupt, right? So if you're the listener, don't interrupt, don't judge, don't give advice. Those are 3 things that you've already said. What does it mean to be a good listener? If I'm the one who now someone has come to confide in me, to share their feelings with me, are there, past those 3 things of the don'ts, what are the do's? What are some of the things that I should do as a good listener?
Eye contact.
All right.
Even if the person, they may make eye contact with you, or they may have their head down, but you keep the eye contact because they're going to come back up.
Okay.
That, I want to say, give the impression that you are listening. But the thing is, it's
don't stare at your cell phone.
Right. I mean, right. It's like a learned gift, and trying to stay in the moment, because if it's going on and on and on, as human, our mind going to tend to wander.
Right.
Just bring yourself back.
Yeah.
Bring yourself back to where you're listening, and try to listen, like I say, for those hard statements that's going on. Mm-hmm. So those are some do's. If you're sitting with them, the best thing to do, and sometimes this can't happen, but when someone's talking, try not to have anything in between.
Okay.
Make it, I don't know what you want to call it, as uncomfortable, but vulnerable.
Okay.
It's like you have something in between you. It's like your little, what's the word I'm looking for? Your safe place.
Right.
Let's make this open. All this is open. Don't be in their face, but be right there.
Right.
And another thing we're saying, don't speak, don't touch.
Okay.
Don't touch when someone is talking with you and really speaking from their heart, because touching stops feelings.
Okay. Interesting. So it seems like, this is really good stuff. Some new stuff for a lot of people, probably. We're embracing the emotion.
Embracing.
Right. So if someone is coming to you and they're willing to share their feelings, then what we're saying is basically don't do anything that's going to prevent them from sharing their feelings.
Exactly.
And so all of those things, if you interrupt them, if you judge them, if you start to give advice immediately, then that's all they're going to start to judge that process as like, okay, I can't really talk to you. But then on a deeper level, if there's anything that you're doing that's making you feel like you're not paying attention, then they're going to be like, this person doesn't care about me. But those are other interesting things, to just like leave yourself that open, and because even touching can be a form of rescuing, right? Like, oh, okay, I'm going to, like, almost like, you don't need to say anything more. I've got you. I'm going to wrap my arms around you. But if we're letting them go through this, then we really need to just let them go through it. So if they start crying, we let them cry.
Yes.
If they start trembling, we let them tremble. That's hard.
That's
hard to do.
It is. It's very hard to do. In fact, in some of my sessions, I'll tell people, if necessary, sit on your hands. Don't try to reach out, touch, none of that. Even like, we have tissue boxes available by the person. Mm-hmm. Do not offer someone a tissue. Let them ask. Right. Or it's right there by them. Because when you do, it stops the tears or the anger, or maybe, trying to stop the anger. Let it. People need to let it out. The truth is coming out. Mm-hmm. Be prepared to accept it, because it's making them free.
That's good insight. Yeah. I think we can take those things. We can put those things into practice. And just as we look at this whole thing, kind of wrapping up, I love, as we look about that, because there's so many things even in my notes that we didn't touch on. Yeah. There's just truth is so foundational, right? And so again, like on Sunday, I hit more of the way we think, our thinking, our thought side, our logical side of ourselves, and how we have to really combat that. We have to combat the lies from Satan with the truth. But today we hit the other side. There's that emotional piece of our brain that is so active and guides so much of what we do. And the biggest way that we lie to ourselves is via suppression, right? Like we just try to push those things down. We try to deny that they exist. So number one takeaway from today is be honest with yourself about your feelings. All right. And then number two would be, if you can be honest with another human being about those same feelings, then that is going to do worlds to help you with your emotional mental health.
Right.
And then I guess number three would be, do everything that you can to be the safe person or to create safe spaces for other people, so that when other people share with you, you can process quickly that it's not about you, it's about them, and that you just are listening, acknowledging, validating, not interrupting, not judging, not advising, unless they specifically maybe ask for that. But that's a different conversation. But so thank Marjorie. And you know, you spoke from your experience and your training, where we mostly kind of got into grief stuff, but we played that into a lot of different ideas and emotions. And so I thank you for your time and sharing with us today.
Well, you're welcome.